This is Pete McNaughton, and you're listening to the 1,000 Second Podcast, and the song you must listen to is Grace 2 by the Tragically Hip.
Hi, I'm Jeff Stephen, and you're listening to the 1,000 Second Album Podcast. This season, we'll be talking about must-hear songs as I continue to ask people that are important to me all about the music that's important to them. Enjoy! Please welcome Pete McNaughton.
Hey, Jeff.
And greetings. And the song of choice today is the Tragically Hip's Grace 2. And you said you're Pete McNaughton. Come on, just let's go back to the beginning of your story with the Hip. Where were you when you got into the band?
Well, not to get all name-droppy right off the top, but my uncle is Rob Baker from the Tragically Hip. So
you know a guy.
I know a guy. And I only mentioned that to inflate my self-ego by naming my connection to him. No. I mentioned it just because, the Hip, for as long as I remember, have been a huge part of my life. So, for as long as I can remember, Tragically Hip music has been around the house. We've always been supporting them. I remember Small Town Bring Down being on the TV for the first time, seeing the video for Last American Exit, their first album, Up to Here, coming out, and just, every single milestone from there on in was just so exciting for us. So we were... from age 6 or 7, 1987, I remember those albums coming out, and we were just ingrained with it. But slowly, as my musical taste started to develop, I realized this is the kind of music I like. I was a big fan of Pearl Jam and all the 90s sort of bands that were coming out in the early 90s. So that was right in line with where my tastes were at as well. So I started getting excited for every release that was coming out after that, especially stuff like Road Apples, Fully Completely coming out with such a massive, huge album, the album that came out right before Day for Night, which contains Grace 2. So I specifically remember being so excited for that release just because Fully Completely came out. I'm in grade 8, you're just anticipating. It was almost like the Canadian version of In Utero, like the anticipation for that coming off of Nevermind. Everybody was super excited for it, and I actually have a distinct memory of waiting in the principal's office, not in trouble, but waiting to do the morning announcements at James R. Henderson Public School.
Speaking of name dropping.
There we go. Yes, exactly. I know James R. Henderson. Yeah. Gary Schultz's office, Henderson, back in 1994, and hearing Grace 2 come on the radio. And I had not heard it yet. It was probably like 2 or 3 months before the album was coming out. And I just remember going, oh my gosh, the new Hip single. And it just sort of slowly creeping in the background, but also being like, oh, this is different. This is not like the other songs I had heard off of Fully Completely. But, slowly but surely became my favorite song by them.
I like it. I'm glad you mentioned the power of their music videos, where seeing Small Town Bring Down was a big thing from your youth. And for me, it was a few years later when Locked in the Trunk of a Car came out. Right. And I was a loyal viewer of the Coca-Cola Countdown on Much Music. And when the video for Locked in the Trunk of a Car came out, my eyes opened wide. I was like, what is this? Where has this been all my life? And,
I know.
Yeah, and then throw in Fully Completely, and it was just totally changed my trajectory.
I know.
Yeah,
it was wild, and just some early memories too. I remember going with my mom to, was it Lansdowne Park, where the Ottawa Rough Riders used to play, and
one of the two Rough Riders in the
one of the two Rough Riders. Yes, you could pass by a TV at some point in the early 90s, and it would say Rough Riders 20, Rough Riders 3. And I feel pretty good for the Rough Riders, but I also feel bad for the Rough Riders. Yeah, exactly. So we're at Canada Day concert, and we went backstage, as we do, as I'm just shamelessly plugging these little memories I had, and talking to my uncle, and I remember a fan coming up and visibly shaking and trembling, just so, I can't believe I'm getting to talk to Rob Baker and get a picture and an autograph, and my mom hysterically laughing after that, just because it was one of those moments where they're playing big shows, they're doing really well, but just to see that level of almost Beatles fandom of we were wow, these it kind of hit you wow, these guys are having a massive impact. Mm-hmm. And it was so cool just to kind of watch it kind of develop sort of naturally, and I don't even think I could fully appreciate it at the time. I almost appreciate it more now, or into my adult years, but very cool. And so no one had a more fully immersed experience as a child than myself, which was a pretty nice bonus growing up.
For sure. And it's funny that, because for me, Kingston, like I didn't grow up in Kingston, so Kingston was this mythical place where the Tragically Hip are from Kingston, Doug Gilmour's from Kingston, and all these great things, my cool older cousins going to Queens and Kingston, and for you it's Uncle Rob.
Uncle Rob. I know, and like I remember him sending us postcards from the road in the early days, like getting a postcard. We found one cleaning up and we're going through some old stuff, and my parents brought like a box full of stuff over, and there's a postcard from Calgary, and it would have been like the Up to Here tour, and it was just like, hey Pedro, how you doing? Like in Calgary, just some checking in on like how hockey was going, and yeah, like it just very cool. And like back then I was just like, oh, that's kind of cool, but I don't think I could fully appreciate the how very cool it was. So yeah, but great memories of seeing them in the early days. I'm just pretty blessed to have seen them so many times live, and you get to have those little conversations with Gord and the rest of the guys throughout the years, so pretty neat.
I like it. And the heading back to the morning announcements at Henderson Public School, you hear Grace 2, and it's, as you mentioned, it's a change of pace. And are there certain things about the track itself that really sort of jumped out at you? Yeah,
well, at the time I don't think I could fully kind of like digest all that. In general, this song has such a vibe. I feel like when it comes on, the energy completely changes in the room. It's one of those songs that can like shift the mood, the atmosphere in a room. Just that opening drums, as soon as you hear it, it's like almost everybody just kind of like freezes in the spot. The opening bass line, once that kicks in, I feel like just the energy in the room completely changes. It's a perfect tone setter for the album. For any live show, it obviously kicked open a lot of live shows for anybody that has seen them. Most famously recorded on the Live Between Us album, which I would say is probably my favorite live recording of the song, even though there are countless others that I've either seen live or that have been put to tape. But yeah, just that opening bass line that kind of plays throughout is so melodic, it's so beautiful, it's kind of haunting, it's something you could just listen to on a loop forever and ever, and it just sounds so good.
Yeah.
There's actually, I was looking at the lyrics, there's not even that many lyrics to the song itself. It's just such a slow build. There's so much space within the song. There's so many opportunities, especially when he plays it live, for him to kind of rant and ad-lib. So I almost feel like every live recording I hear of it, you can almost appreciate as it's a piece of its own, just because he does so many other little things with it, and there's so many ways and opportunities for him to either working out lyrics from other songs that he was working on that became like foreshadowing for songs that came out later, or maybe songs that had already existed. Like he quotes John Lennon in the Live Between Us. There's, his, even just the opening when he says, thank you to the Rio Statics, we're all richer for having seen them tonight. And he's like, sun came up, it shot through the blinds, today was the day, and I was already behind. Just so beautiful, and I don't know, just like you're totally drawn in. I feel like this song is like an amazing movie or something. It's like my favorite kind of movie, like a dark thriller or something. There's so much imagery and stuff going on with the lyrics. You feel like you can kind of picture the characters in this story that he's telling. Just with, like he said, I'm fabulously rich, come on, just let's go. She kind of bit her lip, geez, I don't know. Like you can just picture this scene going down, and Gord's obviously such a great actor on stage as well. He would act these things out, and you'd just be fully just like mesmerized by his actions. And I feel like this is almost like if there was an Academy Award for just vocal performances, not because of like his range or anything like that, but just like the complex emotions that he's kind of going throughout the whole song, right up until the part where he's screaming him here now. Yeah, it's just an amazing song.
Yeah, and no counter arguments here.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the bass intro too, because both of us are guitar enthusiasts, and I always thought of myself as a guitar player that had a bass, but I think that was one of the first bass lines I tried to learn too, because it's such just a neat melody, like way up on the fretboard, and just to kick in the song that way, I thought was brilliant. And you're right that the song lends itself so well to Gord's ad-libs, or his the sort of the rants and the like, even that in the Live Between Us version you mentioned, instead of "said I'm fabulously rich," said I'm tragically hip.
Yeah, and I actually heard, I didn't know how that all started, but I remember seeing Gord interviewed on Q, and I don't know if you've heard this too, but it was Saturday Night Live. When they played Saturday Night Live, they played Grace 2, and he, for that performance, he said that, told his nephew that it was his 11th birthday, or in and around there, maybe that night, and he said, "Okay, buddy, I'm going to flash you the number 11 with his two fingers, so one finger aside." If you watch the performance, he holds up two fingers, but he said that, you can't disappoint a grade, like a 10-year-old or sorry, an 11-year-old, obviously, a great kid in grade 5 on national television when you made him a promise like this. So he said all before they were going out, he was just like, "Don't forget to do 11, don't forget to do 11." And he said the last thing he remembered was Dan Aykroyd introducing them, "Ladies and gentlemen, my friends, the Tragically Hip." He said then that was just kind of playing in his head, but it's amazing that it fits like so phonetically well, or just it fits that exact same sort of syllable count or whatever. And then from then on in, it was like he was kind of adding that in, like periodically. Wouldn't do it every single time, but it became like kind of almost a 50-50 of whether he was going to sing it.
And all the more reason why so many of us would see them dozens of times. Just what's he going to do? Like, because no two renditions would ever be the same, and so
that's right.
To see which version you're going to get that night, and what future songs are going to be previewed.
That's what's so cool about a song like this, is it's one of those songs where here we are talking about it and kind of dissecting its meaning. So I don't know if there's going to be anybody hearing this that has never heard the song before, but I feel like listening to it live, and if you have not heard it live that many times, go and listen to it live and then listen to the album version. I almost feel like you appreciate the album version so much more after hearing it live. Sometimes I feel like it takes that for songs to kind of reveal themselves to you, or to kind of grab a full appreciation. There's a lot of bands like that. Like, I find Wilco is one of those bands. I didn't fully appreciate them till I heard them live. My Morning Jacket, another band that I feel like on an album sometimes can sound maybe underwhelming, but then you go hear them live. Not that the Hip's ever underwhelming, but this song, you might not feel the full power of it until you actually hear the live version as well. So
for sure.
Yeah.
And though like you said, the studio album's no slouch either. And
no, not at all. But I just feel like there's some extra oomph to the live versions as well.
100%. Same with like Springtime in Vienna. I remember being another one of their tunes that just, once you hear it live, I was like, yes, this is
I know. Just his vocals are a little bit quieter on the album, but they do reach those highs. But it's the whole production of the album's almost a little bit hazier, a little bit more kind of spooky. Which I really love about that album. I feel like makes it so worth revisiting.
Yeah,
it's hard to pick, and obviously it's one of those things that's always changing. But Day for Night, if I had to pick an album, is my favorite album as well by them. So I just love the production on the album. I just feel like it's the most interesting, and I think it's probably just fits to my taste, like maybe just even fitting with talking about movies, like movies that I'm drawn to, things like No Country for Old Men, or David Fincher films. I kind of like those like dark, almost noir kind of films, and that's probably why I'm such a fan of this album, but also this song in particular. For sure. But some people like the Marvel movies, and that would be more like, I don't know, New Orleans is Sinking. I get
to each their own.
Yes, to each their own. Yeah.
And for me, I guess I'd have a tough time not choosing Fully Completely, just because of the gateway factor. Where if that's the first one, it's tough to supplant. But I'd say this one, if I had to choose what's their all-time best first side for a record, it would be tough not to pick this one, where the bookends of Grace 2 and then Nautical Disaster to close is just off the charts.
And Nautical might be number 2 in my, if I had to pick a number 2 song, I think so. Yeah, even more reason why the album itself is number 1 if you've got your number 1 and number 2 favorite songs on it. But I feel like, and then number 3 could be like 30 songs. I feel like
precisely.
Yeah.
And, with a lot of honorable mentions as well.
For sure. Oh yeah.
But that's a very good point, that it's a near impossible task to pick a top 3, a top 1. But the challenge here is to pick a must here. And what is it, despite the catalog of however many studio albums, what is it about Grace 2 that stands out as the must-hear Tragically hip song?
Well, I think even though, the hip being so beloved in Canada, they're, internationally, they're very much underappreciated. And I feel like this is their best song to me. So I don't know if it would be the song I would introduce people to necessarily as like a gateway. Like, this is the first song you got to hear. Although I feel like some people might think that was a good choice as well. But I remember there was a lot of debate about them playing Grace 2 on Saturday Night Live and whether they should have gone back to a greatest hits just to introduce themselves to a national or an international audience, and whether that was a missed opportunity. But this song, I just feel like gets better and better. Like, there's not many songs that I feel like I want to go back to as much as Grace 2. It's in a small company of songs that I almost never get sick of. Like, sometimes you can tire of a song, you might have to shelve it for months, but I could listen to this song every single day, and there's moments in it where I get goosebumps. It's weird. It's like one of those songs where I can get goosebumps even though I just heard it yesterday and I'm listening to it loud in the car, and certain parts of the song, whether it's, the climax of the end with, the reverb of the guitars kicking in, and there's so many points in the song where I just get so emotional, like listening to it. It's and I remember at the last show, I was lucky enough to get to the final show in Kingston, and out of all the songs that almost got me, like, I was at the point of tears and getting choked up, it was this song. It's just such an emotional song that I felt like, and just listening to him sing it, I don't know what it is about it. It's not necessarily like, it's not like Fiddler's Green where the subject matter is necessarily like, oh, what a sad topic necessarily, but it's just the way he sings it is just, it's just over the top emotion. So I just feel like it's definitely the best hip song, and definitely one of my favorite songs of all time. There's I feel like a lot of people, when they get asked what their favorite hip song is, I feel like the go-to answer is a lot of, maybe like the most stock answer would be Wheat Kings, Bob Cajun, Ahead by a Century, and all great songs.
Yeah. No wrong answer.
No wrong answer. Absolutely no wrong answer. But I feel like this song is the most interesting. It's definitely, if you're going to get into the hip, would have to be on the playlist. And I feel like would be a clincher. I think once you kind of hook them in, maybe with a few other songs to go, oh, this is nice, this sounds good, then you go, but they also do this. And then I feel like that's the kind of thing that's like the, it'd be the equivalent of playing somebody Fake Plastic Trees by Radiohead or Just, and you're like, okay, you like the band, now put on Paranoid Android, or put on something a little bit more complex and interesting.
It's interesting you mentioned that they're maybe internationally underappreciated compared to some other Canadian exports. They haven't necessarily had the same reach as some others. There's a part of me that finds that kind of charming as well. That's like, we get it, which is so there's a part of me that, but also a part of me that wants the world to hear, because it's been such a huge part of our lives, and so it feels like something that the world ought to hear as well. Yeah. And for me, the upon hearing you today as well, I really do think this is, if you want to have a glimpse, a bit of a flavor of what the hip was, it feels like this song's about as good of a small package as you can do, where it's the building, it shows their range from the studio to the live to the all 5 members making like totally valuable contributions. So it feels like, even though I've probably got other hip songs that are, note for note, I think I probably would list them higher on my favorite tracks, I really like this as so I'm glad they did play this on Saturday Night Live as their gateway to the world with the number 11 show.
And I thought so too. I was actually like, well, especially with the benefit of some distance from I absolutely think they made the right decision. Now, I remember at the time thinking like, oh, they should have played, but this is me looking at this in grade, I remember staying up late with my sister. We were babysitting that night. We remember watching Saturday Night Live. We were like almost just like clutching the couch, just almost like, oh my gosh, like it was like a rocket ship going off or something. But I remember thinking to myself, oh, they should have played like Courage, or they should have played 50 Mission Cap, like, which would have made no sense really, for them to play something like that. but like New Orleans is singing, all those songs were running through my head that like, oh, they should play that song. But you know, through an adult lens now, I'm like, oh, what an amazing performance and what an amazing song to have cataloged out there eternally for them. So.
And I think Nautical Disaster, was the second song.
That was the second song. Yeah, that was my only thing. I kind of almost wish, and I know it was live television, but I almost kind of wish he kind of threw in a little bit more quirkiness and was a little bit more unhinged. Not to say he was completely letting loose and being like, completely awesomely weird gourd on stage with his twitchiness and just everything you'd want to see from a visual standpoint. But I almost kind of wish he would throw in. He did do a little ad-lib at the end of Nautical Disaster. There was just a little, I can't remember, I don't have it ready off the top of my head, but there was a little singy thing he did right at the end that might have been a Leonard Cohen or something. I'd have to look into it again.
But not as much battling with the microphone stand as
right. Somebody out there is yelling at their radio right now because they know the answer to what I'm trying to say. Yes. Yeah. But I keep trying to find better live versions of it out there. Not that anything could top it, but it is such a good live song that I was very interested in this new hit box set that just came out of reissuing Phantom Power. Yeah. And it was an okay version of Grace 2. There's no bad version of Grace 2, but I thought the recording, you could tell it was in like a small club or something, and it just sounded a little bit, I don't know if the recording was as great as some other ones. I actually think the live, that night in Toronto, the concert film, that version's pretty good as well. That's a pretty amazing version. He has some really amazing rants, and if you actually watch the film, just his physical performance in that is otherworldly. Yeah, it just feels it's hilarious. Like there's almost some laugh out loud moments in it, just the way he's moving. And yeah, I think there's even like a little Peter Pan reference where he says I'm flying and he looks like he's like on the speaker and he looks like he's about to go off the edge. Yeah. So great.
Oh, that's cool. Well, a huge thank you for coming today, Pete. And to borrow a line, we are all richer for having heard you today discussing Grace 2.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jeff.
This has been the 1000 Second Album Podcast. Thanks for sharing some of your time, energy, and attention with us today. Take care.